So get this, Netflix deploys code thousands of times per day. Impressed. Thousands. How is that even possible?
Thousands, really? Even on a Friday afternoon before a long weekend? It sounds a bit exaggerated. What are we even counting as a deployment there? Is it just tiny config tweaks?
Okay, fair point. Maybe not every single one is a full-blown feature release, but the frequency is the key. The point is, they've built a... So get this, Netflix deploys code thousands of times per day. Impressed. Thousands. How is that even possible?
Thousands, really? Even on a Friday afternoon before a long weekend? It sounds a bit exaggerated. What are we even counting as a deployment there? Is it just tiny config tweaks?
Okay, fair point. Maybe not every single one is a full-blown feature release, but the frequency is the key. The point is, they've built a system where developers can ship code with incredible speed and confidence. And that's where internal developer platforms, or IDPs, come in.
All right, I'm with you. The why is clear. Faster deployments, happier developers, quicker feedback loops. But what happens when you don't have a good IDP? What's the real pain point that companies are trying to solve here?
Imagine you're a developer, right? You've got this brilliant new feature ready to go. But before it can see the light of day, you have to navigate a labyrinth of different tools, configurations, and approvals. You're wrestling with infrastructure setup, security policies, compliance checks, and a million other things that have nothing to do with the actual code you wrote. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. And that's where developer bottlenecks happen, slowing releases and frustrating everyone.
Exactly. It's like trying to build a house, but having to hand mix the concrete yourself, lay the pipes, and wire the electricity before you can even start framing the walls. You're spending all your time on the plumbing instead of the architecture. So let's get into the core of it. What is an IDP really? What are the key components?
Think of an IDP as a self-service portal for developers. It's a curated collection of tools, services, and workflows, all designed to make it easy for them to build, deploy, and manage applications. It's like a platform as a product, but for internal use.
Okay, self-service portal. Makes sense. But what does that actually look like in practice? Can you give me some examples of those tools, services, and workflows?
Sure. At the very least, you'll need a way for developers to provision infrastructure. Think creating a new Kubernetes cluster or spinning up a database without having to file a ticket with the operations team. You'll need CI/CD pipelines that are pre-configured with best practices for security and compliance. And you'll need monitoring and alerting tools so developers can quickly identify and fix issues in production. Think about how AWS makes it easy to spin up infrastructure, but tailored to your company's specific needs and policies.
So it's about abstracting away the complexity of the underlying infrastructure and providing a consistent, standardized experience for developers. But doesn't that risk limiting developer freedom and creativity? What if a developer wants to tweak the underlying infrastructure?
That's a valid concern. The key is to find the right balance between standardization and flexibility. You want to provide developers with a paved road, but you don't want them to force them to stay on it if they have a good reason to go off-road. You can provide escape hatches, so to speak. For example, you can allow developers to customize their infrastructure configurations within certain limits, or you can provide them with access to the underlying infrastructure if they need it for debugging or troubleshooting.
Okay, that makes sense. So standardization with escape hatches. What about the different components? How did they fit together? Is there a common architecture for IDPs?
It typically involves several layers. At the bottom, you have your core infrastructure, your cloud providers, your Kubernetes clusters, your databases. Then you have a layer of abstraction that provides a consistent API for accessing that infrastructure. This layer might be built on top of tools like Terraform, Crossplane, or Pulumi. And finally, you have a self-service portal that developers use to interact with the platform. This portal might be a custom-built web application, or it might be based on an open-source tool like Backstage or Airplane.
Backstage. I've heard that name a lot. It's from Spotify, right?
Exactly. Spotify open-sourced Backstage to help other companies build their own IDPs. It provides a central place for developers to discover and access all the tools and services they need, as well as a framework for building custom plugins. Think of it as the single pane of glass for your entire development ecosystem.
So Spotify built it for themselves, then realized other companies had the same problem and open sourced it. That's a great example of a company investing in its internal tooling and then sharing it with the world. Are there other companies that have taken a similar approach?
Absolutely. Google is famous for its internal tooling. They have a whole team dedicated to building and maintaining tools that help their developers be more productive. One example is their internal build system, Blaze, which is now available as Bazel. And Meta, of course, has a huge investment in internal tooling, including tools for code review, testing, and deployment.
Okay, so we've talked about the what and the why of IDPs. Let's talk about the how. What are some common pitfalls that companies should avoid when building an IDP? What are the things that can derail the whole project?
The biggest mistake I see is trying to boil the ocean. Companies try to build a platform that does everything for everyone, and they end up with a complex, unwieldy system that no one wants to use. It's like trying to build a Swiss Army knife that can do everything from cutting wood to performing surgery. It's just not practical.
So, scope creep is a major risk. What else? What about the organizational challenges? It seems like building an IDP would require a lot of collaboration between different teams.
You're spot on. Another big pitfall is a lack of buy-in from different teams. Building an IDP requires collaboration between development, operations, security, and other teams. If one of those teams is not on board, the project is likely to fail. It's like trying to build a car with one team designing the engine, another team designing the chassis, and a third team designing the interior without any communication between them.
So you need cross-functional collaboration and a clear understanding of everyone's needs. What about the technical challenges? Are there any specific technologies or architectures that companies should avoid?
I'd say avoid getting too attached to any one technology. The technology landscape is constantly changing, and what works today might not work tomorrow. Focus on building a platform that is flexible and adaptable so you can easily swap out different components as needed. Don't build a castle on quicksand, so to speak.
Okay, so avoid boiling the ocean, get buy-in from all the relevant teams, and don't get too attached to any one technology. That's solid advice. Now let's talk about the counterintuitive part. What's the thing that most engineers get wrong about IDPs?
Here's where it gets interesting. Most engineers think of IDPs as a technical problem. They focus on the technology and the architecture, and they forget about the people. But the truth is, building a successful IDP is more about culture than it is about technology. It's about creating a culture of self-service, automation, and continuous improvement.
So it's not just about building the platform, it's about changing the way people work. It's about empowering developers to take ownership of their own workflows and to experiment and iterate quickly.
Exactly. It's about shifting from a mindset of we build it, you run it, to a mindset of we build it together. It's about creating a shared responsibility for the entire software delivery lifecycle. Think about how OpenAI empowers researchers to deploy models. They give them the guardrails, but also the freedom to experiment.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like the difference between a top-down command and control organization and a bottom-up self-organizing team. The IDP is just a tool to enable that shift in culture.
Precisely. And here's the crazy part. Sometimes the best IDP is no IDP.
Wait, what? After all this talk about the importance of IDPs, you're saying that sometimes you don't need one?
Hear me out. If you're a small company with a small team of developers, you might not need a full-blown IDP. You can probably get away with using a collection of off-the-shelf tools and some ad hoc scripts. The key is to focus on solving the actual problems that your developers are facing, rather than blindly following the latest trend.
So it's about being pragmatic and focusing on the return on investment. If the cost of building and maintaining an IDP outweighs the benefits, then it's probably not worth it.
Exactly. It's like building a bridge to cross a small stream. Sometimes it's easier just to jump across. But for larger companies, that stream becomes a river and that bridge becomes essential.
Okay, that's a great analogy. So what are some practical takeaways for software engineers listening to this? What should they do differently after hearing this conversation?
First, start by identifying the biggest pain points in your current development workflow. What are the things that are slowing you down the most? Where are you spending the most time on non-coding tasks?
That's a great starting point. Then what?
Second, talk to your colleagues and find out what tools and processes they're using. Are there any existing solutions that you can leverage? Don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. Maybe another team has already solved a similar problem.
Collaboration is key. And finally?
Finally, start small and iterate. Don't try to build the perfect IDP from day one. Start with a minimal viable product, MVP, and gradually add features and functionality as needed. Think of it as building a house one room at a time, rather than trying to build the entire house at once.
So identify the pain points, leverage existing solutions, and start small and iterate. Those are 3 actionable steps that any software engineer can take to improve their development workflow.
Exactly. Remember, the goal is to make it easier for developers to focus on what they do best, writing code.
Well said. It's about removing friction and empowering developers to do their best work.
And ultimately, that's what an IDP is all about, unlocking developer velocity.
I think that's the perfect way to put it. Thanks, Parth.
Anytime, Shrija.